So now we had like it was talking to a function via function URL, but like you typically don't want to actually talk to a function via unless you're going to have like maybe one or two functions, right? Like that's not how you want to do that. You actually want to have set up an API for the whole thing. And within AWS, you'd usually use API Gateway to do that, to set up all the different, API endpoints and so on, and manage access to that. So you'd add your security to certain endpoints, et cetera. A function URL is going to be by default kind of exposed publicly, and you may not want to do that. So like you might want to actually call your API via API Gateway. And that's what I'm doing here. So instead of using a function URL, I'm actually doing this is all the identical setup, except now I'm calling the function via an endpoint in my API via API Gateway. So I'm actually setting up the Lambda function, but instead of the function URL, I'm creating a REST API via the API Gateway. And this one is pretty open by default, but you can obviously configure it however you want. I just, for simplicity's sake, did it by default. And I'm adding like an API endpoint of just /hello. I'm adding this Lambda integration. And so like so that it's able to call this Lambda here. And then the rest is the same stuff you saw before, the S3 deployment and CloudFront is up here as well. All that stuff is basically the same. Although now it's just doing everything via API gateways. But I want to show you just, now we're actually starting to get to something like resembling a real, more real setup, like a little bit more complex, because we've got CloudFront, S3, API gateway, and Lambda, all deploying. Like if you were to deploy all of those pieces to AWS, probably going to take a while, but it's already done. We are going to go to the CloudFront distribution URL, but we can actually see this one just to see, like, this is how we've exposed the endpoint here, which is running. This is going to be at hello was the endpoint we created, right? Yep, there we go. So saying I used API Gateway to call this. So now if I were to go, obviously it's not going to be too impressive here because it's just, you've seen the app now a few times, but if I were to go to the website, you'll see like, okay, there we go.